Torpedo Anna is a potential contender for the Belmont, and she's a filly. And the last time a filly ran in the Belmont, to my recollection, is 2007, when Rags to Riches beat Curlin down the stretch in a duel. And Rags to Riches was a hell of a filly, big girl, and she had been sired by, or her dam was better than Honor, who had sired the Belmont winner the year before in Jazzle. So it doesn't happen too often. Thorpedo Anna clearly has been this as a 3-year-old the best filly, without a doubt. Had a resounding win in the Oaks as well as in the Fantasy Stakes. So why not give a shot against the boys, I suppose, is what the thinking is. Trained by Kenny McPeak, and Brian Hernandez is in the irons. They won the Oaks and the Derby together, so they're having a pretty good year. It's hard to, there's a lot of things to on paper to like about Torpedo Anna. We take a look at her pedigree. One of the things that concerns me and has all along, and I'll admit that I was dead wrong about this horse in the Oaks, is that she's by Fast Anna. Now, Fast Anna is in the Medaglia d'Oro line, which is usually a good 2-turn line, but Fast Anna's most significant win was in the King's Bishop, which is now the Allen Jerkins. It's a grade 1 at Saratoga. It's run on Travers Day at 7 furlongs. And generally, when horses are running that race, they're basically a sprinter, miler type of horse. Obviously, if Fast Anna had 2-turn aspirations, or they thought he was capable, rather, would have been running in the Travers. So that's kind of an indication to me that pedigree-wise, maybe 2 turns isn't what Thorpedo Anna necessarily wants. Sataves is a relatively unknown mare. She's what was unraced and has had a couple of them have been unraced. But by Uncle Mo, who certainly has had his share of horses who have got a mile and a quarter, including Nyquist, who won the Derby, but isn't necessarily a stamina influence. Now, you take a look at the Conduit mare profile, and you see it is skewed a little more towards speed. So you don't see on the face, you got to go back a generation to get a stamina influence in Medaglia d'Oro. So not necessarily 2-turn pedigree. Now, Torpedo Anna certainly is a very talented horse, but I would think it may be more on class that she's winning the last couple of races around 2 turns. You do look at her dosage profile. There is a solid stamina influence there, so there is a little bit of stamina, but it is a couple generations removed, going back to Sadler's Wells. So just on face, pedigree, I don't necessarily see 2 turns, and that's my biggest concern with Thorpedo Anna. You look at the get for Fast Anna, and it was a relatively new sire, so you do have quite a few black-type winners, smaller stakes, but ones of note, would be, of course, Torpedo Anna is one of the leaders. Bring Me a Check, I do recall seeing a few times, and but for the most part, Dreaming of Kona, who was on the Derby Trail last year, but none real prominent horses past Thorpedo Anna. And we look at the get, and you see Thorpedo Anna is clearly the best in the running. Charlie O being the only other one that ran, has had a couple of wins for $100,000, so kind of a average to mediocre performer. So not a lot of indication from the female get. Now we look at the Equibase, and this is again, looking at this brings up my concern that I've had with Torpedo Anna all along. You look at the maiden special, weight 86, allowance optional claiming 99. Round 2 turns at the Goldenrod drops to an 83. Debuts at 3 at a mile and a 16th in the Fantasy Stakes. Again, another 2-turn race, and posts her career high best figure. Fresh, coming off the bench, very good sign. However, goes to the Kentucky Oaks at a mile and an eighth, a longer distance and the longest to date, and her speed number dips to a 94. So, again, this horse has quality. I don't want to say that she does not. I just wonder if 2 turns, a mile and a quarter, is necessarily going to be what this horse wants. Now, we're going to take a look back at the Kentucky Oaks, and maybe we can get some ideas from that. And we'll just have to see with Torpedo Anna. So here's the Kentucky Oaks, and Torpedo Anna is saddle blanket 5, but in the 4 hole due to the scratch on the rail. And you see it was a full field. You see ducked in a little bit at the break, but no big deal. Right to the front goes Torpedo Anna. And, you know, Kenny McPeak had talked to her up pretty good before this race, and he said, you know, they better bring him Bear because he had a grizzly, and he was right. She ran a excellent race. Kind of interesting here that they tried to challenge for the lead a little bit, but and put some pressure on Torpedo Anna. But after the first quarter, you know, I didn't consider it to be really a pressured type of run for her. 22-4, pretty quick for the opening quarter, but you see they kind of settle in, and I mean, she's getting some pressure, but I wouldn't call it, you know, heavy duty. But Fiona's Magic, I mean, doesn't want 2 turns at all, and really Ways and Means, it turns out, probably not a 2-turn horse either.
Then just FYI on the outside into Champagne, saving all the ground, just 2 lengths off the lead. Then Regulatory Risk.
46-3, that's pretty quick as well.
But meanwhile, Torpedo Anna is still there, and Ways and Means is right alongside.
You see, at this point, I thought Ways and Means was going to come get her and inhale her, and just didn't happen. And same thing with Just FYI. So certainly an impressive race for Torpedo Anna, without a doubt. Held off all the challengers, changed leads right on cue. 1:11-3. I mean, it's, you know, those are pretty legitimate fractions for a 1 1/8 in the mud, and she was equal to the task. You see, drifting out a little bit in the stretch, but they weren't getting her, that's for sure. Very solid effort, very impressive. And you can certainly see why Kenny McPeak would toy with the idea of putting her in the Belmont, for sure. So let's take a look at our pace study of Torpedo Anna. And we start with the Goldenrod because that was around 2 turns as a 2-year-old. And it pairs the Fantasy Stakes, which is run at a similar distance, with a debut at 3. So it's a good way to maybe figure out if there's been some progression or not. We look in the Goldenrod, and those are diminishing fractions for a horse in the front end. That's not a big concern, but what is a 51.19. That's kind of a mediocre finish. And if you consider that the first 2 fractions were relatively moderate to slow, then it's a bit of a concern. And that was the issue I had with Torpedo Anna, I've had all along, and particularly when you couple that with her pedigree. So we move to the Fantasy Stakes, and you see that you're still at that moderate early fraction, but look at the second fraction, 52.93. She got a breather in the middle of that race, and consequently she had something left for the third fraction, which is a very respectable 53.05. So at that point, you have to look and think, well, maybe this horse, it's not a great sign that 2 turns or a 1 1/8 or a 1 1/4 is going to be a distance she can handle, but it's a little bit of a sign of some improvement. But that getting a breather like that in the middle certainly would allow for a better fraction late. Now we move on to the Kentucky Oaks, and that's borne out by the fact that she had to do a lot of running early. That early, she had a little bit of jockeying with Fiona's Magic for the lead, and consequently had to run probably quicker than they wanted. A 56.42 is more of a sprinter first call fraction, and we noted that at 22-3 is pretty quick. The second fraction, you see, they was also quick. Or I'm sorry, forgive me. That first fraction wasn't 22-3; it was 46 and change. But you move to the second call, and look how her pace numbers diminish, having to work that hard early, 52.88, and that's a big drop off. And I believe that fraction was 111-3. So they were moving on the front end, and I think the idea was they thought they could pressure Torpedo Anna and that she would wilt. Well, she didn't wilt. She ran off. But look at that third fraction, 50.67. That's no good. That is, if you saw that heading into the Kentucky Derby, you would throw the horse out because you would say, probably not going to get a distance. As I've mentioned before, when we did our handicapping for the Derby, generally 53 or more feet per second in the final fraction is a good indication a horse is going to get the mile and a quarter competitively. So 50.67, this is a horse you would toss from the Derby, plain and simple. These are not fractions that are commensurate with a horse who can wire a Belmont field, even at a mile and a quarter. And I think that's probably what Torpedo Anna will try to do. You do see her percentage energy is about right for a early pace horse at 51.06%. It's just, I think the longer the distance go, the more challenged this horse is going to be. Now, if you look at the projected time, with those same fractions of 46 and 3, 111 and 3, her mile and a quarter final time is 2:03 and 4. That's 2 seconds slower than the horses we've calculated out to date. Batten Down, Antiquarian, Mindframe, they've all run and the Wine Steward for that matter, they've all run considerably faster times. So again, I think this distance is a challenge for Torpedo Anna. So if we look at issues and concerns, obviously that's the one. That's the biggest one, is the distance. I don't think this horse is going to be able to handle it. Also, going against the boys. You've got a horse, the 3-year-old crop, I think is a really good indication that Torpedo Anna to win at a mile and an eighth with those fractions, it's not a very good crop. And, Just FYI was a horse we were all high on, but looks very similar to the Wine Steward. A really good horse who brings it every time, but maybe just hasn't taken that next step over the winter. Ways and Means was not a 2-turn horse. And Leslie's Rose really didn't show up. Just don't know about, I just have a feeling this horse is really going to have a big, big challenge going against the boys. And the final issue is, of course, the race shape. Now, if she wants to get on the front end and try to wire the field, well, she's going to have to deal potentially with Mindframe, Fierceness, Batten Down, Antiquarian. Those are all horses who want to be up near the lead. So I think there's a lot of challenges for Torpedo Anna. And if she does run in the Belmont, she's a toss for me.